Awesome. Well, thanks everyone for joining in. It's exciting to see some of the new faces, but also some of the faces that attended the first call where we had a pretty general, I would say, idea about using AI and figuring out how to use innovation to save and rebuild Ukraine. We had a pretty good first kickoff call where we basically discussed that we need some specific projects, some specific constraints, so we can wrap our creative minds around it. Thanks to Chris Boy for mentioning that constraint requirement. We took that and came back with a very specific project that got sparked by a friend of mine, the founder of Second Life. So I was talking with him at one of the AI for Good dinners, and he suggested that it would be cool to build a platform that could bridge the cultural context and perspectives. And that's how this whole project came to be. And obviously, it's just a draft. It's a vision for what we can create with technology. And the whole idea of this call to get people together, brainstorm, ideate, and I'm sure, some of you have some more creative ideas. So that's kind of like the agenda for this call today. And I think we can also start from a round of just quick introductions. Some of you guys know each other, but I see some new faces. So maybe let's do quick intros.
Okay, I can start. Maybe I'll pass the word to someone. But I've seen most of people here, but for those who don't know me, my name is Alina. I come from Ukraine. I live in Ukraine. I've lived here all my life. I work as a marketing manager. I also joined Ukraine now about 2 years ago, and I'm still here. I'm really excited about this project because it's actually a thing that really wonders me, how US and Ukraine collaborate, and how Ukraine now is a great example of this collaboration. And I think that we can use our experience, your experiences that you've had over your lives to create a better way to communicate, between US and Ukraine. So yeah, speaking about my experience, I worked in marketing, I worked for AI companies, so I hope to be useful here and provide great ideas. And I can pass my word to Chris, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Yeah, so Chris, I live in Las Vegas. My connection to Ukraine, I served the Mormon mission 20 years ago to Ukraine, so I lived there for 2 years, so it's a place that's important to me. And yeah, my background is in technology, design, product. I've done a number of different companies, and yeah, so here to help. Tom.
Thank you, Chris and Elena. Yeah, Tom Desmond. I live in the Boston, Massachusetts area, town called Braintree. My background is financial. I consult troubled companies, and I became involved with Ukraine Now April 1st, 2022, right after the war started. And that's about it. Brock?
Hey, I'm Brock. I actually live in Las Vegas too, like Chris. I was helping out on with Ukraine Now back must have been about a year ago, helping with various projects, and I don't have that close a connection with Ukraine, but I'm an Army veteran, and there's a lot of stuff that was happening with Ukraine that I just felt affected by it, not in the way of that Ukrainians do, but I just wanted to find a way to help. So I got in touch with Arthur, and then I started volunteering So I'm just here to help out. My background is a BSA systems analyst. I've worked in various IT departments for the last 14 years, so anything I can do to help. I'll pass it to Hector.
Hi, good morning, everybody. I'm from Mexico. Say hello, everybody. And one of I came here because I am teacher in my country, and if I can help you or anybody, I'm here. I'm stay here because I want to practice my English, and then too, I can help you because I am university teacher, and I have a degree in administration, business, and financial things. And if I can help you, I'm stay here.
That's what
Well,
matters. Thank you, Hector.
Hector,
Uh,
since you're in business and you want to practice your English, send me an email and we'll converse, okay? Because
Thank you
we're
very
running
much.
we're running an MBA program for the Ukrainian kids, and they really like it because they're learning English. So there's no reason, since you're a professor, we'd love to have you jump in. So
Thank you very much, Desmond.
yeah, we'll get you my email address somehow. Sorry to
Okay.
interrupt. Sorry to interrupt.
Don't worry. Thank you.
My pleasure. Who's next? Fireflies?
Yeah, we have Andrei. Maybe you can
Oh,
introduce
sorry.
yourself. Hi.
Hi there. Yeah, looks like I'm also that one of new faces here that you can see. My name is Andrei. I am Ukrainian. I just joined your meeting. To be honest, I don't remember even where I found the registration link, and I'm not sure how I can be useful for you and which assistance I can provide. In general, I am software developer and in mostly like a web developer, software engineer of web applications. Nice to meet you, all of you.
Nice to meet you too. It's good to have you here. We
Thank you.
also have Olga. She just joined. Olga, hi. We're just doing a quick round of introductions. If you can please introduce yourself, just a few words about yourself. Where are you from? What do you do?
Hello. Where I'm from Ukraine, from Lviv directly, and I work in trading industry, but I'm also artificial intelligence patient individual. So that's why I decided to join today's meeting, and I'm curious about what we will discover today. So nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. Thank you for coming. All right, so I believe we can move on. We have shared with you the document about the project. I'm not sure if you had some time to review it, but I think a nice way to go on would be to just recap what is the current idea is about. I can start. Arthur, maybe you want to start?
Yeah, go ahead. And
Right. Yeah.
just FYI, guys, Alina is the one who created this document. Obviously, we helped, but yeah, since you're leading this, go for it.
Thank you. I created the document, but the idea was created by Arthur and Philip, as Arthur already mentioned. So the whole, I'd say, current idea of Kultura AI is about creating an online platform that would facilitate the networking between US and Ukraine. And as I mentioned in my introduction, that Ukraine now is actually a great example of such connection between two nations. And as you know, full-scale war actually accelerated the development of our connection between US and Ukraine. because, you know, Ukraine is quite a young state. You know, we've been independent about 33 years. And for many countries, we are still like a very, very young, unknown area. So after those 2 years, we still saw so many hurdles and obstacles between this communication, like namely, Ukrainians are not native English speakers. So obviously, it might be difficult for people from the US to understand what Ukrainians are saying, or there are still so many misconceptions about Ukraine that it's kind of like post-Soviet small Russian state, very similar to Russian, that Ukraine doesn't have like much of a culture, that Ukraine is still having like horrible times now since it's war, but actually our life still moves on. We have so many things going on, so many projects happening. So this whole idea of Kultura AI is about like creating a platform where those obstacles would be like removed and people could freely just connect for various purposes, for just cultural exchange, for creating new projects, since so many great projects were born over those 2 years. And we'll move on to those features that we brainstormed with Otto and with Philip. So, but first of all, I just wanted to start with a bit of problem ideation. I described a bit of it, what we've already like discovered, brainstormed, but I wanted to listen to you and ask a bit about your experiences. You've already shared a bit, how are you related to Ukraine, how you came here, how you started volunteering for Ukraine now. But overall, if you could share a bit more about what encourages you to engage with Ukrainians, if you've had some of your past experiences, how you connected to Ukrainian community, how did that go? Did you face like any specific challenges that could like help us in the project so we could like find those obstacles and remove them for you? So if anyone wants to start, please raise hand, just unmute and talk, or feel free to use chat. Yeah, who wants to start?
You want me to start, Alina?
Tom, you worked with Ukrainians so much and you continue to
Yeah,
be
yeah.
working. So I think
Yeah,
you have some unique perspective.
Yeah, I didn't want to be rude, but yeah. So basically, you know, to all the my American brothers here, now I got an excuse to go to Las Vegas, guys. I've never been to Las Vegas, so I'll come out and visit, and maybe Hector can meet us there. But so, no, but so the way I became involved, just to go back for a frame of reference, I 42 years ago, 44 years ago, I took a university class in Russian politics and history. Not that I'm a scholar, by no means. I'm not even an academic. I probably got a C in the class, but I found it very interesting. And you know, at that time, it occurred to me what we're really dealing with. You know, Russia's Russia, right? I don't have to get into that. So when the war started, you know, when I saw the buildup on TV, I said, well, they're definitely going to invade because people don't line up those kinds of logistics at a border with the intent of turning back. It was obvious to me. So when it finally occurred, you know, I was like so many other Americans and people who around the world who love freedom and I was screaming at my TV every night. And you know, outraged. And then I saw this young man. I think we all saw it. There was a young man who was sent out to guard a bridge. He was probably 18 or 19 years old, if that. And you know, he was in a uniform that didn't fit him, but his orders were to stop a Russian column that was coming down the road. And the interviewer asked the young man, you know, are you going to run when that column comes? And he goes, oh, absolutely not. I'm going to stay and fight. My mom and dad and my grandparents are back there. That's who I'm protecting. So that really struck me. You know, I said, well, you know, if this kid's any indication of what the Ukrainians are like, you know, I'm going to start paying attention more and figure out a way how I can help. And then just by chance, I was watching Fox News and Artur came on, Artur came on. And, you know, it occurred to me, I thought to myself, well, this guy seems to be pretty reasonable. He's not, you know, off the grid here. He has you know, a good approach to solving the problem. And his last request was to hire an accountant. So I reached out to him and I got on board with Ukraine April 1st of that year, Ukraine Now. And I really, if you asked me back then, would I be as involved as I am now? I'd probably say, I'd tell you you're crazy. But, you know, the thing about Ukrainians is that you really grow to love them. And, you know, it's, sorry, they're a very good group of people. What I really like about the Ukrainians is that they're measured. You know, they don't pound the table. I think Tor and Julia can tell you I do more table pounding than anybody else. But they're very measured. They're very cerebral. They're very focused on solving problems. They're very focused on problem solving. You know, over the course of the past 2 years, we at Ukraine Now developed an MBA program for the youth of Ukraine. Even the young kids, it's really amazing how dedicated they are. You know, I really enjoyed putting on those classes. We typically do it when we have the thing going on Saturday morning, but they really absorb everything. They're really interested in what's going on in the West. They're very interested in learning English. You know, I could go on talking about them for another 3 hours, 4 hours, but you know, the experience is well worth it. And I'm fully involved. I want to see this thing through to the end. I'm not going anywhere, do whatever I can do. And, you know, maybe someday I'll get to visit Ukraine. But, you know, the biggest problem I have is that I can't separate myself from the Ukrainians. It's really, they're like my family now. So just be warned, all of you guys who are Americans and Mexicans or from wherever you are, the Ukrainians grow on you and you really come to love them. So you're warned. You're warned. So that's about it. Anton's here. How you doing, Anton? Is that you?
Yeah, hi everyone.
Yeah. Anton's another great one. Julia, they're all good. They're all good. So sorry if I'm chewing up a lot of time, but you know, I could go on forever.
No, that's amazing. Thank you for sharing. Like, I've seen some of your work. I don't know if I've seen all of that, but what I've seen, it was amazing. And it really inspires how you help Ukraine. And maybe you could share with us some things that maybe you've encountered through this time, like some communication problems with Ukrainians, maybe some cultural things that like you think this way and Ukrainians think this way. Maybe you could share some.
Yeah. So I've been really noticing in that. So now I'll probably get in trouble for saying this, but you know, and it's not based on any empirical data. It's more based on anecdotal things that I've seen, you know, interacting with not just a group of Ukrainians in Ukraine now, but others that I've met through my involvement, is that, you know, I think the Soviet, and again, I'm just speculating, so take it for what it's worth. I think the Soviet mentality has restrained Ukraine. You know, the Soviet way of thinking, you know, that comes out. I find, you know, what I'll do is going forward, since we're focusing on mental health, I'll try to think of when I spot it, I'll share it with everybody. And you can decide whether I'm crazy or not. But I think there's, I don't know, there's, let me just put it this way. I want to pick my words carefully. Because the Ukrainians that I've dealt with are very intelligent, very highly educated. But sometimes they have a hard time thinking outside the box. And I hate that phrase, but, you know, they're kind of straitjacket sometimes. They don't, I mean, they're not as free. And I think it's trauma. I think it's the way it's been drilled into them. And, you know, they just don't think as freely as Americans, like, and I only say Americans because I haven't traveled that much. Okay. So, But, Americans have a tendency to just do data dumps, brain dumps, if you know what I'm talking about. We'll say anything at any time. And I don't know if that's the case in Eastern Europe, Does that make sense? Did I offend everybody?
No, not at all. Well,
No,
Now I'm not going to get an invite back.
well, I'd actually
You
agree.
asked, Elena, you asked, so I told you, and I.
No,
But
that's great. It's great that you shared because you see, one of things that we were like brainstorming about for this platform is creating the AI generated prompts, like in a way that, for example, if you're like talking right now and you could see some AI can generate some ideas for you to continue the conversation, right? In those moments where, for example, some of cultural differences occur, like for example, when Ukrainians start like, I don't know, when they lack critical thinking, let's be like brutal, like the AI could prompt some of the conversation starters and conversation ideas to keep the communication going. Because like from my experience, I know that like I engaged with people from the US, not that many times, but for a few. And I do see this big difference that Americans actually have great skills in communication. They are they are talking like flawlessly. They always know what to say, how to continue the conversation. And in my like humble opinion, Ukrainians do like that. Like Ukrainians really stumble when they talk. They have difficulties like formulating opinions and speaking freely. I don't know why. Maybe because we have like, I don't want to say post-Soviet upbringing, but it's about the way that we talk. We don't talk a lot. We talk briefly and to the point. Like sometimes we get ashamed if we talk some stupid things, for example, when we are kids. So we have to really think through things that we are saying before we start talking. So maybe that's the thing, if that makes sense. Yeah, so
Well, let me interrupt you for a second, because that's a very good point. So my firm, we have 3 Ukrainian interns working for us. They're going to I'm going to hire them as analysts at some point. So I have two young ladies and a young man. And I noticed that they weren't talking every Wednesday we have a meeting, we get on the phone and we talk about, turnaround consulting. So now I make a point for the last, at the end of the call, I make them tell me what's going on in their life. Like I'll say, Alina, okay, what's going on with you? What's happening with you this week? And they were really stifled by it at first, but what's really nice is to see them open up, because now they talk and that we communicate, the conversation flows. But I always make a point of them telling me, or the staff at my firm too, because it's a group call. They're part of the firm now. I say, okay, what's going on with you? How's it going to school? Tell me what's going on. And they were, at first, it was a very short response, but now they just engage and they tell me what's going on. It's really great. So, yeah.
You could open them. That's great. Small talk is not something we are good at. I realize that. I see that in many Ukrainians. So yeah, this could be like one of things that the new platform could help solve. Like if Ukrainians can tell how they are doing, like there could be like AI prompts for them, really, because it's actually a difficult thing to start talking about yourself. Many Ukrainians feel difficulties talking about themselves. So yeah.
Well, in American business, small talk, and I put that in quotes, is very important. Okay, it's like an ice, right? So, and I'm sure it's the same in Mexico too, Hector. And but I think my fellow Americans here can disagree with me. But in business, it's always small talk at the beginning. How you doing? How's your golf game? Are you a Patriots fan? Are you a Yankees fan? Whatever the case might be. So typically in an American business meeting, if it's an hour, the first 10, 12, 15 minutes is small talk. It's all small talk. And then you get into the business, and it's a very good icebreaker, because you really want to settle in. You should think about it. So if Ukrainians, if you're not, you just think about small talk as like settling into the conversation, right? You're settling into the conversation.
Yeah, that makes sense. And
Yeah.
actually, I have one more question. I'm sorry, it's turning into an interview of Tom. I'm really sorry, but I have just one more question because I'm interested.
Yeah.
Did you ever have those situations when you felt that some sensitive topics may come up, like including the whole context of Ukraine right now, like the war is going on, and sometimes, you know, asking people how they're doing, they may not be doing well, you know. So did you have like those situations sometimes that you felt like a bit hesitant about asking some things, or like lacking context about certain things about Ukraine right now?
Well, the thing is, that's a good question because I just want to think of, because I know we're being recorded and I want it to be recorded, but so like I know certain things about the, okay, so this is a good point, okay? So I know something about the personal lives and circumstances of all of my interns, all three of them, okay? And I've never, Kate fills me in on it. So I make a point of never really asking them specifics because I don't want them to be upset, right? But at the same time, I'll ask questions to show that we care, right? Like for example, I'll say, how's the electricity? You guys have enough electricity? Or we'll send them a little something every now and then. But I don't ask about specifically their personal life, what's going on, because I don't want to upset them. But now, when you're dealing with adults, uh, again, that's why it's important to have icebreaker talk, small talk, whatever you want. So let's just say I met you at a coffee shop, Elena, and I noticed that you were from Ukraine, and and I've been around long enough to know that sometimes people want to talk about it, right? But they just don't know how to start talking about it. So I might ask you where you went to university, just get a conversation going. So in business, I know. So again, to your point, uh, I'm 68 years old, so I've been in a lot of negotiations, a lot of business. It's really important to let a conversation flow, if you know what I'm talking about. So if you're talking to somebody about a sensitive issue, whether it's in business or war, whatever the case might be, start the conversation and just let it take its own natural course. Because if people don't want to talk about something, they'll either tell you directly or they'll, most people will drop a hint that they don't want to talk about it because most people are polite regardless of where they're from. So they're not going to tell you to shut up or anything like that.
Mhm.
So, but at the same time, people do want to get things off their chest. So it's always just be sensitive to the people you're talking to, and try to understand where they're coming from, give the conversation its own natural flow, and don't put any time parameters on it. Like, don't say, I want to get this answer in 10 minutes. If you're going to have a conversation with somebody, be prepared to have a conversation. And it could be a 10-minute conversation or a 40-minute conversation. So it's a good point. Even so, that's important in negotiations as well. I'll make the final point and shut up again. So, a lot of times you hear, you go into a negotiation, and it's the same with a conversation. I want to get something out of this person, right? I want to win this negotiation. And, Donald Trump has a book out, The Art of the Deal or something. And, in the book, I'm told it says, he wants to get the better of somebody. And I'm not making a negative comment on Donald Trump, but I'm just saying it's a book that he has out. And obviously he's been very successful for him financially. But my approach is completely different. So if I sit down and negotiate with Artur or Brock or Hector, I want to make it work for them, right? So I don't want to get over on them. I want to end the negotiation where we both feel good about the outcome. And why do I want to do that? Because I want Hector and Brock and Chris to be my partner for the rest of my life so that I can go back to them and do more business with them. So I think a lot of people have this, and it might be true. And again, I see it in Eastern Europe too, when I hear these businessmen talking about, they have that approach that Trump has where, we're going to get over on you. I want to come out of this negotiation with more than you do. And that's not the way to enter any type of relationship. So that's what we teach our kids. We have a lesson on negotiations.
Wow.
Did that make sense? Does that make sense? I don't know if I'm making sense here.
Yeah, that makes sense. And actually, you raised a great point, I think, about building the lifelong connections. I think that's something like, again, it's my humble opinion. I might be wrong about Ukrainians. It's just my opinion. So I do see that a lot, that people do tend to engage in like situation, like particular one, like particular project, and then they can just drop off after that. And that's a problem, I think. Again, it's
Yeah,
a difference, I think, about us.
yeah, I mean, like, so from an AI point of view, and I'm not a technical person at all, you know, we should approach this, and just my opinion, and again, I'm basing it on my life experience, and it's true. 99% of the people I've met in business and otherwise, right, particularly in business, are good people. All right, they're nice people, and they want to do the right thing. And to go back to my comment and what you reinforced, Elena, is that you want to build, you know, or let me say we, okay, because we're working on this together, lifelong relationships with people, right? Not one-offs, because in the end, you're more successful if you build relationships. So in business, the most important thing a person can have is their Rolodex, right? Who have you met over the past, 20 years? So most of you guys are a lot younger than me. So you should really keep track of everybody you meet somehow. Make little notes and business cards, keep a database. Maybe jot down a little personal anecdote about them. Because you never know when you're going to cross paths again. So relationships are very important. This is a good discussion to have because I think it really ties into AI, from my understanding of it. So like I tell the kids, I call them kids, they're young adults, but I'll continue to call them kids because they're like, I've taken them under, my wing, that to always like build your Rolodex, your relationships, practice your interaction with your peers, right? How you communicate with your peers. We go over that. Don't take communication for granted.
Yeah, I think, Tom, you're dropping gem of a knowledge for this project, because basically all the things that you've described is ultimately the ideal metrics that we want to optimize this experience for. Like, to make sure that the average Ukrainian connects with as many Americans as possible, because you never know when those connections may become useful. Maybe someone meets an accountant and then they need help with accounting in US, or someone meets some other specialized lawyer or someone, and you never know when those connections can become helpful. I think that's a very important part that AI can actually be super helpful with, because it can systematize all of these connections that you're having and actually help highlight those kind of like what you said, anecdotes, right? Just like a short memory of what you connected about with the person. We can do things like that. That's already a possibility with the current state of AI and LLMs. The other aspect.
Go ahead. Keep going. Go ahead. Keep going.
The other aspect that you guys talked about was kind of like the context, and I really like the idea of creating almost like a guide for the conversation, so that when person is mentioning something and you as American, for example, you just don't know about that historical context, or not because you're ignorant, just because that's a much deeper context than you would be exposed to. And we can actually have that guide almost like give you references to what the person is talking about. When the person is talking about something, I don't know, in Kiev Rus, most Americans, haven't heard about what Kiev Rus actually is. To them, Russia and Moscow was the first thing, right? Because that's the Russian propaganda. So those kinds of like guided links and almost like snapshots while you're having a conversation about certain topic, to me, act as an amplifier to the quality of discussion, almost educational angle, and the extension of the small talk. because all of a sudden you get all of these amazing topics that you can actually build a conversation on, versus, you know, figuring out what do I ask next, you know, what's the thing like besides the war, because, you know, we live in the context of war Ukraine. So all the things that bubble up into our head is basically the recent bombings of a hospital, you know, the Eastern Front, you know, all of these things. So as much as we can, if we can create the extra context that is outside of just the war, I think that's a helpful, you know, experience to optimize for.
So let me just
that's
add
a
one
good
more-
point. Like,
Go
because
ahead.
even
Go
when
ahead.
Alina said she's from Khmelnytsky, I was like, oh yeah, I know Bogdan. He's a cool guy, or whatever, right? Like that would Ukrainians
Exactly.
would appreciate that. Or I'm like, oh yeah, it's between Ternopil and, you know, Vinnytsia or whatever, right? So that's like, okay, cool. But if I didn't know that, and she's like, oh, I'm from Khmelnytsky, the chat could say, here's a link to the map. So while you're talking, you can immediately go and look at the map and be like, oh, okay, and here's, you know, you could pull in Wikipedia content that says like, here's the common industries in Khmelnytsky, here's the population, here's what the weather is in the summer. Like it could give you all sorts of,
And the famous bazaar.
yeah, the famous bazaar, right? So there's things that could help you as an assistant, give you the conversational stuff. And I don't know about the bazaar, so I think that's a joke probably. But I don't know. Anyway.
Well, as Alina, as a representative, give us some cultural context.
Yeah, it's sort of like the shopping center for Ukraine. It's Khmelnytsky, place where we had the biggest market for clothes, for other things. It used to be this way. And like if you ask any Ukrainian, like what do they know about Khmelnytsky, they'll say they have the bazaar. That's all. Yeah, and it's funny. The city is called after Bogdan Khmelnytsky when he wasn't actually born in Khmelnytsky. Like, so it doesn't make any sense, you know, the fact. And I wanted to add actually about this point that like prompts for people from the US about Ukraine. I think it could work vice versa, because I'll be honest, not so many Ukrainians know about the US, about states overall. So that would be a great way to continue to ask something like, if there could be a question, ask this person about this, just to learn more about the region or the particular activity that the person is doing. I think that would be great and would complement both people.
You know, I'm going to shut up after this, but I just want to make this point. So, and it's a real compliment on Ukrainians, particularly the kids. Okay, I've noticed the difference between the kids and the adults, and we'll talk about that later. Okay, because there's a big difference between, you know, Ukrainians that are 18, 19, 20, 21, and the older group. But we'll maybe another time. But so what we've done at my firm is that, and I really gave it a lot of thought before I did it because I wasn't sure if I could do it, but I've involved them with bank meetings. So, and the reception has been great. I've had these kids on, so we have a call coming up and it's in a week and a half with a big bank. I don't want to name that bank, but it's a very, very big bank. It's one of the biggest banks in the world. And I have a marketing call. And I decided to involve the interns. They're going to be on that call. And I told the banker about it. And he says, oh, great. Yeah, we'd love to have them on. So they've been on probably 3 or 4 calls with big banks. And the bankers love it. They, you know, they really like, they greeted them openly, and the kids have really adapted to it. And I've actually put them on a case. They're working on a case that has a contentious dynamic to it between the company and the bank, and both the bank and the company love having them part of that. So there's a lot of support. There's a huge amount of support in the United States for Ukraine. Don't listen to the news. You know, you hear that it may be waning, and probably, you know, raising the money is the whole thing with Congress and raising money is one thing, but the average American supports to the Ukraine effort, and so the kids, I see them advancing so quickly, and they're really participating in this my consulting firm. And I kid people. I said, you know, these Ukrainian kids are taking over my firm, you know. And it's a lot of value added. I just wanted to say that, you know, it's really impressive. And you should, you know, the Ukrainians should be proud of their kids and of who they are, because they've adapted so well. And I think my American friends, I'll just make one other comment on yours. And I'm so like most Americans, and I'm one of them, like 99% of Americans, okay, after the 9th grade, they don't look at a map of Europe. And we just don't. And you know, like if you ask, probably to this day, most of us couldn't point out where Ukraine is on the map. We know of it, what's going on. But if you put a map of Europe with in front of an American, and I'm one of them, I'm not taking a shot at my countrymen, they wouldn't be able to fill it out. You know, they wouldn't be able to fill it out. So to your point, Elena, there's a lot each of us can learn.
Like to be honest, if you ask me like to point where's Boston, I don't know if
Yeah.
I'm gonna do that. I'll be honest.
Yeah, tell me where Kansas City is, Elena.
No, that's a no. Sorry.
Or Mexico.
Oh, Mexico, yeah.
No, that's easy. You guys are so huge.
Yeah, I went down to Mexico on business once, Hector. It's a beautiful country. I landed, I forget where I landed, but I went to a factory down there, and very nice people. The Latin culture is very warm culture, very warm, very warm.
Thank you very much. Here in Mexico, people can understand a lot of the things about of war in Europe, but when I saw in internet, in the news, the war is here, I check my classes and do the best I can say of all of my students about the war, about Ukraine, people, history, geography, and when I check that I feel so compromised about the project because everybody wants to live free, and here is about a problem too. And when I check the email, I say I can help because I don't know much about the English or Ukraine, but I'm here. Yo puedo hablar muy bien español y puedo trabajar muy bien. Tengo un doctorado, tengo una maestría, tengo una licenciatura. I am a degree, a master, and PhD, but in English it's very difficult for me. But I'm here because I can help about education, business, financial, and do all the things. I can understand all, but I need practice with my English.
Well, Hector, I want to learn Spanish, so you and I should stay in touch, okay? We'll talk once a week, all right? At least once a week.
Thank you. Yeah, for me, it's a great pleasure to stay here. Yeah, because in I'm living in San Cristobal, Chiapas, and a long years ago, here it's a war too, because the SZLN stay here and do a war too, but now narcos and all of these things give me a reason for stay here because I can help other people. Trabajo con estudiantes, con niños, con jóvenes, y eso me ayuda muchísimo. Quiero aprender de otras culturas y sobre todo también poder aportar mucho al proyecto. Si en algo puedo ayudarles, aquí estaré.
It's actually amazing, Hector, when you're talking about this, because you know, when we started ideating about this project, especially with Philip, him being American, obviously wanting to do this, you know, for other languages too, And I thought and realized that what we create with Cultura AI is basically a model of how to do this for all other countries and all other cultures. So once, someday you want to point at Mexico, at San Cristobal, and actually, be able to talk with Hector, that is a teacher there, and can tell you about everything that is going on with narcos, because when you live in America, you don't actually understand what's happening down there in Mexico. When you live in Ukraine, you have no idea. Just like you've never even heard about Pablo Escobar. So that kind of enablement of creating a platform that can bridge those perspectives, it's almost like democratizing travel. Because to be able, for me to go and travel to San Cristobal, first of all, I have to spend money. Then I have to understand where I'm going, logistics, hotels, and all of this. If we can recreate that experience or bring it a little bit closer to what travel is, because when you go somewhere, you hire a guide, right? And the reason why you hire a guide, it's not because the information about San Cristobal doesn't exist on the internet. It's because you want to have that experience of guided something by a person from that culture that is relevant to that culture. So that's exactly what we're striving here, so that average American or average Mexican can jump on this platform and have that guided experience and exposure that mimics basically travel. Yeah. So thank you, Hector, for sharing your experience. That was actually very meaningful.
Thank you, Arthur.
Yeah, thanks, Hector. That was good.
And Chris, amazing, summarization of the features and ideas. Thank you for that.
Yeah, as we've been talking, I've been just kind of playing around in Figma with design ideas. So I can share those too if people want to see it.
Oh, you've already designed the platform. Love it.
Well, I was thinking about we were chatting earlier yesterday or something, right? So I was like, what resources exist? My friend has a company, right, that does auto translation, transcription. Maybe that's an option for plugging into the platform. And then I have another friend who has a company that's a chat, like video chat, really simple video chat. And so I was taking the kind of design of my friend's video chat platform as a base. Let me just share what I was doing while we're chatting. So I was like, okay, what could it be like to, you see this?
Yep, perfect.
Right, so like the one friend's company is called Yep, but I was like, okay, what would a right sidebar look like that's like in real time showing the thing? Obviously you need you need an original speaker's language plus whatever my preference as a user might be, right? So, for example, like Hector, like this, I've tested this, my friend's platform with him, and I think he's from, es venezolano o es mexicano, no puedo recordar, pero mi amigo es un hispanohablante, sí, right? So, and we can talk together, and then like he can talk in Spanish back to me the way you were, but it would show subtitles in this case, English, Ukrainian, даже на русском, если это легче, like it really just depends, right? So yeah, like the cool thing is a platform like this could allow, наприклад, в українській є таке розуміння surzhyk, right? So like surzhyk is this idea in Ukrainian that like it's a kind of, es una mezcla de dos idiomas, right? So it's a mix of two languages. It's Russian and Ukrainian, and it's kind of you have to be quite educated to speak really clean Ukrainian. Like a lot of times there's certain words that get switched all the time. So yeah, yeah, розмовляти українською, чистою українською. That's like a
Wow, your Ukrainian is amazing.
right? So like all these things come together, but this could allow everyone to speak comfortably, and they could say like, oh, I'm gonna every other slovo is going to be in a different language as I start to like integrate, you know, like получается такая surzhyk, like it's like a third culture, right? Anyway, so that could be something that's now like wherever someone's at, they can all communicate. But anyway, I was starting to kind of riff on the visuals here, but it's not done. It's just while we've been talking.
I
Very
love this.
impressive. Very impressive. How many
Yeah,
languages do you speak?
Just one, English.
I heard Ukrainian and Spanish, so I
Yeah,
think you.
Russian, Ukrainian, Spanish, but they're all like, those are all intermediate levels. So like enough to get around, but they should be
I'm
better.
still working on my English.
And then I can say phrases and a bunch of others, but
Good for you.
thanks.
That's great.
Love it, Chris. In terms of like the sidebar, I was thinking about exactly that. Kind of like that's where the things bubble up, right? The context or additional questions, like the next steps for the conversation. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. So this was up where, you know, if that's my question for you, Artur, is how important is it to be building all the tech or are seeking out partnerships with existing tech?
Oh,
Okay.
if we don't have to build any tech, that would be a success state. But I think we'll have to build some.
Yeah, yeah. Kind of like a middleware like a layer that lays on top of some of these pieces. Yeah. So cool. Anyway, I'll put this in the Slack channel just as it is right now so people can see it better as we're doing this.
How about other people? Andriy, Olha, do you have some insights from the Ukrainian side that you would imagine this working for in terms of you being able to speak with Americans and having, you know, the context or like conversation starters and stuff like that?
This translation is not very good. I just pulled it real quick as we were talking. You don't ходити до спортзалу. It's the, right?
No, you can say do.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I would even say that colloquial Ukrainian would be more do.
Oh, okay. Yeah, to me, that would be a value for all those people seeking connection for language practice, like we saw with Tom and Hector too. Like, if it just is free language practice and cultural connection, yeah, to ask questions, to
Yeah, and even when you hear words in other language, I think it would be cool because when I was traveling Central America and I didn't know any Spanish, and then I started hearing these words that actually sound more Ukrainian than English, like noche, you know, niche in Ukrainian. And I was like, oh wow, cool, they're, you know, almost the same. So those kinds of things I think also help build a better language understanding if someone wants to learn the language. I see, Olha, you unmuted yourself. So
Yes, thank you. I'm a bit laughing because I am trying to recap how I get into this meeting. So in terms of any experience in communication with people from United States, I was participating in one program. Maybe you have heard about this. It's Engine program. Do anybody knows? No? Okay, so this program that connect people from Ukraine with people from mainly from United States to practice and to improve English speaking skills. And what I noticed is that Americans, they are very open and all the time trying to keep conversation going. And sometimes I see this difference in communication with Ukrainians, but to be honest, it really depends on person. because it really depends on person and in intercultural skills. So what else to share? Because I don't know what else to add.
That was very good. I
Yeah,
agree
I
with.
think, sorry, Tom.
Go
I
ahead.
think Tom brought up a really awesome point that matters, which is earlier, my experience in Ukraine was that Ukrainians, like all people, don't really like surface level, nice without having a real intent to invest in the relationship. So that's why I would often be told that people thought Americans were quite fake because they would say, hi, how are you? How's your day? How are you doing? But they didn't really care. It was just a nice way to interact. And so, and Americans would think that Ukrainians were being rude because they weren't super friendly. And it's like, I don't fucking know you. I'm just going to buy some food from you and then we're never going to see each other again. So why am I going to invest potentially in that? Right. So,
I'll give you a quick anecdote on that topic. My first time in US, I came on a student working travel program, and I had a very shitty job. Obviously, this is like students, abuse type of a work. And then first day, I go to the grocery store after that whole day, traveling on a bus for like 2 hours to get to the job, exhausted. I go to the grocery store, I buy the foods, I get to the register, and the woman is there, and she's asking, "Hey, how are you? How's it going?" And I say, "Bad." And she just like freezes and just loses her speech because like she didn't expect that. There was not a social contract to hear bad, and she was like and she couldn't say anything, and I was like, it's okay, it's okay. And she's like, are you okay? And I'm like, yeah, it's fine, it's fine.
yeah, she's not looking for a real answer. She's just like, that's what we do, right?
No,
So
that's exactly right. Chris is exactly right. That's exactly right. But the misconception is that, we do care. We do care. And we're because my work goes all over the country. I go everywhere, okay, in America. I've been everywhere. And people over here care, they really do. I mean, we're the biggest supporters of Ukraine by far. I mean, if you polled American people, they would support you. There's no question. Forget about what you hear on the news, because we see the pictures coming out of Ukraine, and we listen to your enemy. When your enemy speaks, we're horrified. So we do care. And uh, so I think what we're talking about now goes back to my original point, is that, Eastern Europeans or Europeans in general, that in my opinion, the ones I've engaged with are suspicious of kindness. They misinterpret it. And I've been in a couple of business deals where I was really turned off by a couple of guys. I'm not going to say what countries they were from, but they were near Ukraine. They weren't Ukrainians, but they were near Ukraine. And I'm not going to say they were definitely Eastern Europe, but they were European. And I was really turned off by them. I thought their attitude was terrible. They just, had their heads up to what. And it was basically because they couldn't communicate. They didn't know how to communicate. So I think if this group focused on communications, it would be a home run.
yeah,
It'd be really
I
good.
think people, yeah, I know we care, but to ask the blanket, how are you? Actually, usually in Ukrainian or Russian, right? Yeah, like Alina just wrote, means you expect a proper answer, not just a fine, right?
Yeah,
Like it's not a loose greeting, it's a pretty serious question culturally, right? Or so if you're not
I
prepared
agree.
for the answer, then like this idea of how is your mood today? How do you say
Yeah.
that? Як твої настрій? Or how would you say that, Alina? Yeah. Okay.
Як настрій?
Як настрій. Okay. So
You're right about that, Chris. You're right about it. It comes from a different place. It comes from, so for the, so when we always ask each other how we're doing, right? I mean, we'll be crossing the street with somebody and say, hey, how you doing? We don't even know the person. We'll never see him again. I mean, that's just what we do. And
totally.
yeah. And
Yeah,
some,
The other,
stuff gets
the other,
lost. Yeah.
yeah,
Go
the
ahead.
other example that I always reference to is the fact that Americans have these like small like social contracts that are self-assumed and learned, where like, hey, how you doing? And that doesn't actually mean you have to reply at all, you know. Or when you meet someone for the first time and you're like, oh, awesome, let's definitely hang out together or let's go for a coffee or something. It doesn't actually mean that that coffee will happen. And it's not like that they are lying. It's just the social contract that they've learned through their life to use. Where in Ukraine, like I was offended when that coffee didn't happen because I was like, you know, I would see that person months later and I was like, hey, and they were just like, hey, how you doing? And just pass by. And I was like, dude,
Totally.
you wanted to hang out, you know?
Same thing with Mexicans, right? Like if you say ahorita, you're like, do you mean right now? Or does that mean like later? Because ahorita means now, but it doesn't mean now. It can be, now is a very loose concept, right, Hector? Right? Like that's,
Yes, obviously it's like a coffee. Give me a moment. That's how moment is that? It's 1 hour, 1 minute, long time ago. When your mom say, "Hey, you can help ahorita." How much is that? Nobody knows, but it's a colloquial term here. It's about ahorita. I don't know. There are
you have to
many.
almost say like ahorita mismo. Like you have to be like right now, right now. You know, 'cause
Yes,
right now doesn't mean right now.
yes, but everybody here understand that, and the colloquial words is one of the communication. It's weird because when people stay here in my country, all the time is like a what because people understand, but it's like a local culture. And maybe when we talk about Ukraine, it's the same. People understand, but maybe we can use words about everybody knows and do the best friendly communication for everybody because when you talk about, I don't know, when like people in sign or in points in United States or Europe, maybe I don't understand what they say, but when you when you use free language and friendly language, maybe we can understand everybody.
Yeah, just to be mindful of time, we're actually 7 minutes over, which is amazing because we're having such an engaging discussion. And I thank everyone for taking time out of their weekend to actually be with us. But if anyone needs to jump off, feel free to do that. I think we're gonna run for maybe another 10 minutes and then wrap it up. Speaking of Mexico, you actually reminded me of another cultural context that is similar between Mexico and Ukraine, which is the marshrutkas or the buses where people just jam in like a bunch of people all together. And obviously when you explain that to Americans, they're like, what do you mean? Like, why? Like, can't you just like make more buses? And and it's very hard to explain that. But I definitely explained it to Latin American people and they're like, yeah, it makes sense, you know, same here.
Yeah, I liked what you said, Artur, about a social contract, these micro social contracts, right? Where they're very much received culturally, learned culturally. And I think like if the platform could facilitate a conversation about the differences, that starts to become an interesting conversation. Like what's the same, what's different? How do people understand these ideas, right? That can be a window into something. Yeah.
I just wrote down that in comments, but I think like Hector raised a fantastic point, just to my point of view as a person who also like wants to speak English but sometimes struggles to find words. You see, there could be like great value to explain not just like cultural differences, like some context, or do additional search to bring up some point, but also like colloquial terms. I think for those people who learn languages, that would be outstanding. Like, how is like marshrutka used by people? How is it perceived by people? For example, like, how are you? Why Ukrainians perceive it, and give such like detailed answers, because it means actually how we are. We start thinking about how our life is going, etc., etc., and we don't perceive it as a small talk. So I think that would be a great thing to add to a platform. It would be a really like educational point, so people would be interested.
Totally. Yeah. It could be cool if you could ask or somehow trigger the AI that's listening, maybe to like know that you're asking it a question to bring that in also, right? Like a kind of like a Hey Siri or an Alexa. Like, I have a specific question that, you know, could be captured and kind of incorporated into the model over time. Could be cool too.
And
Yeah, and it's like finding the right moment and actually using AI for the right context. So like AI, even the current like ChatGPT and others, they know what marshrutka is, right? But let's imagine someone is talking about, oh yeah, I went to work and then I came back on marshrutka and blah blah blah, and you know, that context can be highlighted, like what it is, like why does it exist, and maybe even like memes about marshrutka, because there's a lot of memes about marshrutka. So it's kind of like the right moment, the right time, the right prompt.
And I remember just another feature that we were thinking about those summaries. For example, after the conversation is over, AI could provide some sort of a summary for a person, like those terms were covered, they mean this. I think that would be great for people who have this goal to practice like English, Ukrainian, whatever.
Yeah, I think slang is also one of the most, it's one of the most useful, and like always learn the swear words, always learn the slang. You get the most use out of those. Like, I was in Mexico recently hanging out with my buddy, and it was helpful to have, he's really good at Spanish. He's like lived in South and Latin, like Central America for 30 years. And so I picked up some of his habits, which I thought were cool, like to just experience and, you know, like learn how to say like all sorts of things. And you always get a laugh because no one's expecting slang from a gringo, from like, you know, a huevo, cabrón, or whatever, right? Like people are like, yeah, right? Like they're like, this is great. Who is this?
Gringo is had a great history because Gringo is long years ago. Green card is one of visa for enter the United States. But here in Mexico, there are a culture. People say Gringo. Everybody when it's not here. Say everybody say Gringo, Gringo, European, Gringo. Ukraine, Gringo. It's a kind of communication.
Yeah, I was called gringo too. Yeah,
because they don't know where, which is your nationality,
Yeah.
and like a culture, but it's not like it's general. Say like a güero or kind of that. A huevo is
Oh,
expression.
you know what I like about this, Hector, you know what expression I like is when I hear on these movies, they say, "What's up, SA?"
What's up, essay? Essay, it's a kind of say, it's the same. Hesse is like a compa or a partner or
Yeah,
body. Like
Buddy, yeah.
that.
Yeah, I hear that a lot in the movies. It sounds pretty good. So. It's like a friend, right? It's like,
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
but
like
it's very specific to a kind of
or the word
vato or like
pedo.
cholo. Yeah.
Pedo is like alcohol. I mean, I'm feel me siento pedo. I'm feel drunk. It's pedo problem.
yeah.
Pedo is like good things or kinds of that. One word they can say many interpretations, and it's difficult. Or the Ukraine is the same. Ukraine people in Europe and the east of the Europe, it's a language very complicated, and maybe we can understand a lot of their language and translate in English or in Spanish, or no, podemos traducir el ucraniano, el español, el inglés, y hacerlo una plataforma muy interactiva, muy amigable, para que las personas se entiendan, no importa de dónde seas, pero que entiendan el punto del objetivo. The goal, it's important, because the goal, it's like, cuando vemos el objetivo, entendemos cuál es el estilo de comunicación que debemos de tener. Si vamos enfocados para niños, la comunicación debe de ser adaptada a los niños. Si vamos a los adultos, la comunicación debe de ser adaptada a ellos. Creo que eso es un punto muy importante, la comunicación entre las partes.
Yeah, I wish we had auto translations right here. I only understood every second word.
Yeah, I'm probably the only person on this call who understands all the languages, probably.
Which is amazing. Yeah.
It's lucky, right? But not without lots of work too. But
yeah. Awesome, guys. I think the only other thing that I will throw in here, just to wrap up the call, is basically what we just kind of like jammed about, brainstorm. We actually highlighted a bunch of these like cultural words and phenomenons and things. And the thing that we jammed about with Alina was actually, how about after these calls, you almost get like a cultural journey follow-up. Like, here are the things that you may want to read more about and dig in. If you want to read more about Marshrutka or, Khmelnytsky Bazaar or Bogdan Khmelnytsky, all of these things that got mentioned, that, it would be nice to have almost like this cultural map for your journey as a follow-up call. So, yeah, and surzhyk, exactly. So all these things. So, yeah, just, as one potential features that exist outside of the actual real-time experience that build the retention and have people coming back because they're getting something more out of this as a platform. Other than that, I think this was a huge success. Once again, thanks everyone who joined during their weekend. I really, really appreciate that. I think on the next call, maybe for the next call, we'll have more progress with Chris, your prototype of some visual design. So hopefully we'll share that asynchronously and maybe brainstorm on that aspect. We'll probably do some digging into the technology to enable these experiences. And yeah, I think the landing page or homepage is definitely something that we can also start working on. Alina, want to wrap it up?
Yeah, thank you, everyone. I think there was like a fantastic call today. So many great points you raised, so many. I think those hypotheses that we had, so many of them were confirmed by your experiences that you shared. So thank you so much for sharing, for giving us ideas. We'll certainly share the recording via email. And I'd like to remind you that we also have the channel on Slack. In case you are not there, please text me or just reach out by email. Since you've got here by email, I guess you got the invite. So yeah, please stay in touch and we'll keep you posted. Thank you again for joining, especially those on Saturday.
Nice to meet everybody. It's nice to meet everybody. Stay in touch, Hector. Reach out anytime, Hector, or anybody else. Okay.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
bye.
Say hello, everybody.
All right.
Take care.